Chapter 11 Collateral Damage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That voice. It was something that Yi Si would never forget, even in death. That person was the one who trapped her in White Stallion City with the help of 10 other pros. They'd even made an oath to make her drop all her equipment. After trying to lose them for a few days, Yi Si finally ended the fiasco by escaping the city with an expensive teleportation item. After that incident, Yi Si would always kill any one of them that she had come across, and they would also gang up on her whenever they had seen her. In the end, Yi Si had more success in causing trouble to them. The victory rate against them was about 70% to 80% everyday meat from Spring Rain Guild. Yi Si would never forget about that person even after 10 more years. That guy's persistence and stinginess were the stuff of legend. Despite his high-level, top-tier equipment, and exceptional skills, his character was questionable. He was once listed in Fate's blacklist and was forced out of the game. Acts such as taking over an entire leveling area was just the tip of the iceberg of what everyday meat used to do, but it caused huge trouble for the newbies. More than 20 of them occupied the junction leading to the newbie village in Wolf Canyon, completely sealing off the area. Truth be told, it was the perfect leveling place to take over. Wolf Canyon was an important post.lvl5 questing and leveling area that yielded a lot of coins and experience, while the newbie village was the place where every newbie needed to go. Everyday Meat had on a full set of green equipment, and the players with him possessed high-quality equipment as well. The most frightening thing about the posse, however, was the blood-red color that covered their characters. Killing a player in Fate was forbidden, and the deed came with a high price. The upkeep for a red named player was way higher than the upkeep of a normal player. Judging by the red names of the players standing behind Everyday Meat, they were all from Spring Rain Guild. The Spring Rain Guild did not make it into the top 30. For a guild to be able to afford so many red-named players, its strength should not be belittled. However, no matter how unreasonable Spring Rain Guild was, there were many more players bolder than them. A lot of newbie players protested the guild's actions. Who gave you the right to do that? That place has your name on it. Yeah, you guys seriously think that it's your property. Let's not waste our time talking to them. Go get M. A red-names items will drop if we kill him. The already tense situation went out of control immediately. The newbie players drew their weapons and charged at the Spring Rain Guild players. In a situation like this, there was no way Spring Rain Guild would just stand still and watch. When Everyday Meat motioned with his hand, almost 30 red-named killers charged out to meet the newbie players in battle with their blood-red weapons. The entire junction erupted into chaos just like that. Yi Si climbed on and carefully avoided the warzone. Although Everyday Meat was her nemesis in her past life, she was not dumb enough to instigate a conflict with him at this time and place. "Boss, somebody was trying to sneak into the canyon," shouted one of the players. Everyone's attention shifted to the same direction. Yi Si was about to jump down from the branch and leave when she felt watchful eyes staring at her. She was momentarily stunned. Damn! What had she done to deserve such attention? The players that were either fighting or blockading the place stared at Yi Si. When somebody paid close attention to you, you might have felt that you were charming. But when so many elves were staring at you at the same time, perhaps the only thing you could feel was danger. It was especially so when you were merely a passerby who suddenly became the center of attention. Yi Si pursed her lips and jumped onto the next tree. 737981. She felt a chill creeping down her spine just as she leapt, and her HP bar dropped by half. You were attacked by player Rabid Dog, you have 10 minutes to retaliate. You were attacked by player Tianhe Boy, you have 10 minutes to retaliate. You were attacked by player Glittering Diamond, you have 10 minutes to retaliate. Streams of system messages flooded into Yi Si's ears. Yi Si lowered her body and hid among the leaves. She took the opportunity to go into stealth. Son of a beach. Why was she caught in the crossfire? She was merely trying to sneak past the blockade and into the newbie village. Alas, Yi Si was never one to be afraid even though she tended to avoid confrontations. Damn! Where's that huntress? Must have died. I did not see a death notification. Yi Si peered out from between the leaves. There were not many left at the junction. The newbies were defeated with little to no casualties on Spring Rain Guild's side due to the difference in level and equipment. A few players that were coated blood red were looking at Yi Si's general direction while literally standing among piles of corpses. Although her opponent could not see her when she entered stealth, Yi Si's movement speed was halved. If she moved from a tree to another with that speed, the wobbling of the branches as she moved about would attract attention and she would therefore become an instant target. Yi Si was formulating a counterattack plan as a strong gust of wind blew past the area. She seized the opportunity to leap onto another tree. She dashed past a few branches, stopped, and knocked an arrow. She took aim at the hunter, Rabid Dog, and let the arrow loose. 13245, you have slain an enemy. The system chimed in. Rabid Dog laid motionless on the ground and Spring Rain Guild members closed in on her hiding spot after a brief moment of hesitation. Using the howling wind as cover, Yi Si hid herself among the leaves and repositioned herself rapidly while firing arrows at Tianhe Boy and Glittering Diamond, taking their lives as well. Yi Si was about to disengage from the enemy when a sudden agonizing scream pierced through the air. Before she knew it, Everyday Meat had fallen. Who did that? Right after that, arrows and magics peppered his men from every direction. Everyday Meat's men fell, succumbing to utter confusion after his death. Despite the ruckus, they were able to get organized very quickly. After all, they were still a well-known guild. Even without command, they had split into several groups and headed for the source of incoming attacks. Nobody, of course, was awaiting them there. The junction became more chaotic than it already had. The newbies that respawned to reclaim their items, the Spring Rain Guild who were looking for their assailant, and the invisible assailants themselves. The situation was more heated than a pot of boiling water. Yi Si backed away after assessing the situation. She was merely retaliating against her attackers and were not interested in such chaotic melee. The ones that attacked her were dead anyways. Yi Si's priority right now was going back to the newbie village to learn skills, then proceed in leveling up to LV10 and getting into one of the big cities. The battle at the junction raged on. Yi Si stole a glance at Everyday Meat. A fireball landed on him just as he was revived, sending him back into death's embrace. A few red dot named players suffered the same fate. Spring Rain Guild seemed to be suffering from an organized ambush. There was no need for Yi Si to stay. Yi Si continued to dash between the trees while stealthed, heading straight for the village and leaving the junction far behind her. Hunters could learn Capture Pet, Snake Venom Needle and their first protection skill, Falcon Protection. Yi Si was all reading LVL9 after adventuring in Icy Cave for 2 days straight. She was 70% away from LVL10. She took a look at the level rankings and saw that Let Go of That Girl was at LVL 8 80% progress, nearly catching up with her. Yi Si sighed. That guy was a fanatic in leveling up. In her previous life, Let Go of That Girl was very famous. He was Fate's #1 leveling madman. Every game was like a compact society with different people. Some of them loved money or fighting over the smallest trifles. Some of them loved their equipment and arming themselves with only the best gear. Some of them loved to have friends, and they had friends everywhere. Some of them loved to level up so that they can always stay ahead of everyone. Many of them love money as well, while others craved for power or even girls. Some of them just loved to have an adventure, while others loved glory. All of them were different in their own way. Let Go of That Girl was the sort that liked to level up. Yi Si knew the person, but at the same time, he was an unfamiliar figure. She knew him because he was always high up on the level rankings board. She was unfamiliar with him as she had never actually met him. Despite that, Yi Si was happy to see a familiar name from her last life on the ranking board. ID, Gongzi Yu Race. Elf HP, 420 MP 200 Endurance. 37 plus 5, Equipment Buff, Stamina. 20 Strength. 23 plus 2, Equipment Buff, Intelligence. 20 Agility. 42 plus 2 plus 5, Race Attribute, Equipment Buff, Speed. 2 plus 2, Equipment Buff, Balance. 20 plus 1 plus 3, Race Attribute, Equipment Buff, Perception. 10 plus 1, Race Attribute, Traits. Stealth, Racial Attribute, Concealment, Class Attribute, Sly, Diplomacy, Leap, Roll, Haggle. Her agility and balance were high, but she was lacking on strength. In a huntress's stats, agility affected critical chance and dodge rate. Balance affected the accuracy of attacking while on the move, and strength affected the damage value. Yi Si's character had a low strength and she was not satisfied with her damage value. She could do anything but depend on equipment and talent in the later stage of the game. Turning off her character attribute menu, Yi Si walked into Instructor Zol's wooden house. Good heavens! The entire place was bustling with noise, just like one would expect of a market. Chapter 12 An overpowered skill book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zol noticed Yi Si right away despite the crowd. Yi Si was the holder of several first kills and was the one who activated the hidden side quest. Her prestige in the village was quite high, and the NPCs in the village were always happy to see her. Even Zol, an NPC who was never overly enthusiastic to interact with players, greeted Yi Si warmly. "Oh, young huntress, it's good to see that you've grown once again. I'm sure that Elven King Dower would be glad that a huntress with so much potential was born in the elven race." This was probably the longest sentence to ever leave Zol's mouth since the game started. Merchant and instructor class NPCs' dialogues with a player could not be heard by any bystanders. If they could, Zol's words would certainly make Yi Si the object of all the players' envy. "Hi sir, I would like to learn a new skill." Yi Si bowed humbly at Zol, showing her respect. It didn't matter what anyone thought. One does not simply offend an NPC. "Let me see what skills are available to you." Zol spread out his hands and closed his eyes. A faint blue light appeared on his palms. He opened his eyes after a few moments and said, "Oh, I see it now. You can now learn Pet Capture, Snake Venom Needle, and Falcon's Protection. Of course, Slash and Bow proficiency could be leveled up. Which skills do you want to learn?" "All of them." "Oh really?" Zol raised his eyebrows slightly. Fees were required to learn skills in Fate, and the fees that Yi Si needed to pay right then were nothing compared to the astronomical amount in the later stage of the game. These skills cost 50 silver coins each, and most early LVL 10 players would not have more than 2 gold coins with them. Learning those skills all at once was unbelievably extravagant to them. Zol candidly accepted the 2 gold and 50 silver coins handed to him by Yi Si. A bright golden flash appeared on Yi Si's character, and the system notified her that she had learned Pet Capture, Snake Venom Needle, and Falcon's Protection. Slash and Bow proficiency had been upgraded to LVL 2 as well. "Young huntress, you have the grace of an elf. You're carefree and are never stingy. It's always good to see such an excellent specimen among the young ones. I'm really very happy. If you can get me 100 wild wolf's eyeballs, I think I have a little present for you." Zol gave Yi Si a quest after teaching her the skills instead of making her leave. "It's an honor." Yi Si bowed and accepted the quest. She couldn't help but think. Another hidden quest. Was all my luck eaten up by my encounters with hidden quests? Yi Si was about to explore the icy cave at difficult setting to see if she could solo the dungeon. If she was lucky, she could even get an elite spider as a pet. Changes came faster than the plan. Before meeting Zol, Yi Si had never even thought that she would be able to find a hidden quest, and an easy one at that. Standing under the sunlight after leaving Zal's house, Yi Si took a look at the quest details and attempted to find out its rewards, that was if she could see it. She did not expect to actually be able to see the rewards to Zal's hidden quest, unlike all other hidden quests which had their rewards listed as question marks. Quest: 100 Wild Wolf's Eyeballs. Quest description. Quest reward: Hunter's Mark skill book. The quest reward almost made Yi Si jump with joy. Just like Pet Capture, Hunter's Mark was the Hunter class's trademark skill. When used on a target, a visible mark that could only be seen by the Hunter/Huntress's party members would appear for 15 minutes. With each level increased, the skill would be able to deal additional bonus damage to the target. The Hunter's Mark could deal up to 15% bonus ranged damage to an enemy. It was a very overpowered skill when it came to PvP and PvE. Of course, if every hunter or huntress could learn it, the entire Fate world would be crawling with hunters and huntresses. As mentioned earlier, Fate was a shameless game, and Glory was a shameless company. If they could design such an OP skill, it meant that not everybody could have it. Why? Game balance. All the skills in Fate could be leveled up by instructors, with the emphasis on leveling up. It meant that players could find out about all the overpowered skills from the instructor NPCs. But they were only leveling it up for the players. What does it mean? One might ask. It meant that players were required to learn said skills on their own first. How? Two simple options. The first method, skill books. The second, learn from NPCs that nobody had ever seen or heard of before. Nobody even knew if the second option was real. The first one was more plausible to achieve. There were only two ways to obtain skill books. They were either gifted by NPCs or dropped by monsters. Simply put, the chances were very slim. Take Hunter's Mark for example. Nobody had ever heard of an NPC that would give out the skill book. As for the drop rate from monsters, 1 out of 10,000 from the final bosses of LVL 40 dungeons. Cough, cough. 1 in 10,000 does not necessarily mean that the book would appear every 10,000 times a final boss was killed. Such an overpowered skill book with a ridiculous drop rate. How could Yi Si not be happy? To hell with Icy Cave and Forest of Stone. Yi Si's priority was at Wolf Canyon. Yi Si was able to make a profit from her adventures in the dungeon. She mailed 2 blue chain mail to Gleaming Sunshine and Lefty, Dong Yin and Yitsang, and sold the rest of the blue equipment that were of no use to her to an NPC. She gained almost 2 gold coins out of that. Of course, she'd earn a lot more if those were sold to the players. But that was not what Yi Si wanted. It would basically tell everybody that she had been to the dungeon a lot of times. Although it was just a minor dungeon, it was always not a good thing to get attention from overly curious individuals. Besides, she could save a lot of time by doing that. Yi Si was going to leave the newbie village for the city. The auction houses there were more convenient than having to set up roadside stalls just to sell items. After getting a blacksmith to repair her equipment, Yi Si headed for the junction. A strange thought surfaced in her mind: was the fight still going on? As expected, the crowd had not dispersed yet. The fight was not as intense as before. Less than 30% of the newbie players were still having a standoff with the Spring Rain Guild. The guild's members were already beginning to scatter. Yi Si thought of sneaking into Wolf Canyon through the battlefield, but not everything went smoothly. Someone stood up abruptly from beside Yi Si, after which she subconsciously dodged to the side. It was Everyday Meat who was being spawn camped. He decided to respawn, thinking that he was well hidden. He was not red named, and had not reached LV10 yet. The newbie protection meant that he would not drop any equipment upon death, but being spawn camped for almost an hour was a torturing experience. Besides, pain in fate could only be reduced to a minimum of 30%. With so much death, everyday meat must have been driven to the point of madness. It's you. You're the one who killed me. Everyday meat saw Yi Si, who had not been 3 meters away from him. His eyes lit up with fiery anger as he tried to grab at Yi Si without even waiting for an explanation. Yi Si was rather baffled. It had nothing to do with her at all. Why was she the suspect? She slapped every meat's hand away and said coldly, "Look carefully before you accuse me." "What do you mean I did not see clearly?" Everyday meat spoke with his action. He drew out his staff and threw a fireball at Yi Si. 107 Yi Si shifted her body, and the fireball brushed past her shoulder, and an arrow planted itself at Everyday Meat's back. He immediately fell onto the ground on all fours. Yi Si looked at Everyday Meat. A mischievous grin crept onto her face as she knelt down beside Everyday Meat. "I told you, it wasn't me." "See?" taunted Yi Si. She stood up, and clapped her hands together. She looked at the corpse and said, "I'll be on my way. I'm telling you, your death had nothing to do with me." She literally walked over Everyday Meat's dead body as she left. The guy was so angry that he coughed up blood. He ranted in the guild channel that he would find out whoever that was responsible for his death. Wolf Canyon was packed full of people. There were a lot of wolves in the canyon, but they seemed to be the minority. Yi Si snorted. At this rate, she'd never be able to complete her quest. Thinking of the Hunter's Mark skill book, however, she was willing to kill Steel if that was what she needed to do. She climbed onto a tree and began scaling the cliff wall of the Wolf Canyon thanks to her high balance. She managed to reach a flat ground at the hillside. Yi Si's original intention was to have a bird's eye view of the place, but she ran into 20.30 wolves instead. And more importantly, there was no one around. Oh, she was mistaken. There was someone swinging his weapon wildly at the wolves with sweat dripping down like a waterfall. Chapter 13. Player from the leaderboard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He was killing the wolves very quickly, but as a newbie who was not even level 10, he could not match the wolves' respawn rate no matter how fast he was. As he did not have any plans to eradicate every wolf in the entire canyon, he stood in the northwest corner and battled only with the ones around him. This was perfect. If they could take one corner each, both of them would meet their objectives without interfering the other. After activating Falcon's protection, Yi Si immediately fired her arrows. Whether it was kiting or standing still, she really enjoyed killing the wolves. Before long, she received a party request message. Golden Man sent a request for you to join his party. Golden Man. Yi Si was momentarily stunned when she saw the name. It was the Golden Man who just behind let go of that girl on the leaderboard. Isu had memories of this player as well. Even though he did not level up with insanity like let go of that girl, he was also a crazy leveler. She had only seen him on the leaderboard before, but now she had the chance to meet him in person. Yi Si accepted his request without a moment of hesitation. Then, she opened her map and realized that Golden Man was actually the player who was killing wolves at the northwest corner. His was a rogue, which meant that his critical hit was high and his speed was fast. No wonder he could level up so quickly. Let's do this together. It will be quicker. Golden Man looked at the hunter on his party list. She had hidden all her information, so he did not know what to call her. Golden Man was actually very reluctant to form a party. He did not have such intentions when he first saw Yi Si climbing up. After he saw the way she positioned and kite, however, he immediately decided to form a party with her. The speed at which that hunter could kill was comparable to his. It might even be faster, therefore he knew that they would be efficient if they formed a party together. So, you are Golden Man. Yi Si lifted her head and looked at Golden Man who was standing not far from her. She felt an indescribable feeling. It still felt quite strange to form a party with someone she had only known from the leaderboard in her past life. Yes, you are. I am Gomzi Yu. Yi Si laughed and immediately changed the setting of her name to Allow Party to View. Oh. Golden Man looked at Yi Si's smiling face, then at her name. He could not resist laughing. That is a very interesting name. It was that again. It was that again. Her name was random. She was not a ladyboy. Both of them exchanged some pleasantries as they starting kill the wolves again. Individually, they were already two strong players. After grouping up, they became a wolf-massacring tank. There were wolf carcasses everywhere they went. The drop rate for wild wolf's eyeballs was very low. Only one eyeball dropped for every 10 or more wolves that were killed. Yi Si could only stay calm and concentrate on killing wolves. However, she wondered what was Golden Man's purpose was. He was also engrossed in this wolf killing. If it was just for a quest, he would have completed it much earlier. Why are you killing so many wolves? If it is for a quest, it should be faster than this. Yi Si asked him as it came to her mind. Quest. Golden Man replied with a smile. It was obvious that he did not really like talking. What about you? Why are you killing so many wolves? Same. Both of them smiled and looked at each other. Suddenly, they realized that all the wolves in the canyon had disappeared, to be replaced by a gnome in the north corner. As they walked over, they heard a loud voice from the gnome. Is it you too? You actually killed so many wolves. Did you came here to help me negotiate? Hidden NPC. Both of them became excited when they saw the NPC. They immediately rushed to the gnome and nodded. How can we help you? How can you help? You can help negotiate with that Heishan. That beast. I told him I was only here to discover more veins. It actually locked me here. Doesn't it understand speech? Enter from the mountain opening behind me, and please tell Heishan to quickly return my treasure to me. Locked. Yi Si looked at the gnome and winked. Where are you locked? How can we save you? Damn you Tallies. You think that Frodo is lying? No, Frodo is the most honest gnome. I am trapped in this piece of empty land. God. Are you laughing at me? Quickly, go and negotiate with Heishan. If you don't go now, I will kick your butts. The gnome named Frodo looked angry and kept jumping, both his eyes fiery. Locked in this piece of land. Yi Si looked at Frodo's height and understood. Well, it seemed that such a concentration of essence was not always a good thing. Golden Man bit his lips and jeered. Well, let's go. When they looked again, a shining light that indicated a dungeon appeared on the mountain wall behind Frodo. The two of them were about to enter the dungeon when they heard a prompt from the dungeon. The minimum level requirement for the dungeon Heishan's lair is level 8. Please have 5 members in your party. You do not meet the requirements. There is a risk of dying if you enter this dungeon without proper consideration. Please confirm if you would like to enter this dungeon. There wasn't much risk for the both of them as they had already reached level 10 and would not lose experience if they died. However, it would be such a pity to die and exit such a dungeon without obtaining any items. Do you have any friends who are level 8? Goldman asked Yi Si. The highest is at level 7. Yi Si looked at the characters in her friends box. Only Lu Chang had reached level 7 after she having completed a few quests. Gleaming Sunshine and Lefty were both still struggling at level 4. Goldman sent a friend invitation to Yi Si and simultaneously replied, I have a few friends who are now at level 8. Can they come along? Of course. You can look for the other members. Yi Si nodded in agreement. Judging from the requirements of this dungeon, they should not be able to complete it with only 2 of them. Since she did not have the necessary resources and Golden Man did, there was no reason for her to reject him. Goldman quickly contacted his friends. Then, he said to Yi Cai, Gongzi, I can only find 2 friends who are at level 8. One of my friends is in a party with another level 8 player. However, I do not know him, so I am not sure of his background. Do you want to invite him? Yi Cai laughed in a heroic manner, why can't he come? Friends are made by playing together. This was Yi Cai heartfelt words. In her previous life, she had no friends. That was because she had been unwilling to play with anyone and she was stingy when it came to sharing. In the end, she had become all alone. This time around, she would not make the same mistakes. The smile on Goldman's face became warmer as he heard Yi Cai's words. He nodded and contacted his friends. After some time, he said to Yi Cai, they can only reach us in an hour. They are currently traveling on the map. Let's go back and replenish our supplies in the meantime. No problem. Let's meet up here later. Yi Cai nodded, bidding farewell to Goldman. Then, she leaped onto a branch and quickly left. Golden Man followed suit and left the area speedily. When she got back, she repaired her equipment and replenished her arrows. In an unprecedented manner, Natasha, the enigmatic expressionless beauty, actually gave Yi Cai a quiver with 12 slots. She explained that because Yi Cai's accumulated spending had reached a certain amount, she gave her a small reward. Surprisingly, such promotional methods used by supermarkets were also emulated in this game. Yi Cai smiled as she received the quiver. She quickly filled up the 12 slots of arrows and raced towards the horizontal slope at the midpoint of the Wolf Canyon. She thought that she was fast, but there was actually someone even faster. Goldman was actually waiting for her. He sat on the floor with a bottle of water and was munching a dry biscuit. He waved his hands at her once he spotted her. As both of them sat down, Yi Cai began to eat her biscuit to satisfy her hunger. After barely chatting for a while, they saw a panting dwarf who was with a female gnome, the latter of whom was panting even harder. They climbed up the slope. After he reached the slope, he sat down heavily, faced Golden Man, and said, You horrible person. Why would you find a dungeon on a slope? Do you know that my legs are short? How can I compare to both of you elves who have long legs? The female gnome had resigned herself to lying on the grass. Between large breaths, she said, I am so tired. I am so tired. Why did I choose to be a gnome at the start? It kills me to just climb a hill. Golden Man laughed loudly. He said to Yi Cai, Gongzi, let me introduce them to you. The dwarf is my friend, let go of that girl. The female gnome is my sister's friend, ideal height 1.7 m. Yi Cai froze for a moment. She was startled and could only look at the dwarf blankly. She did not expect this person to be the #1 player on the leaderboard, let go of that girl. In this life, she had seen all the characters that she had never met in her previous life. That girl, ideal, this is a new friend I just met, Gongzi Yu. Her controlling is super impressive. Golden Man introduced Yi Cai to his 2 other friends who were sitting down. Oh, you are really a female. Why did you give yourself a male name? I don't think this game allows transvestite characters. Ideal height 1.7 m stared at Yi Cai with her eyes wide and a face full of curiosity. Yi Cai really wanted to bawl her eyes out. It was random. Yi Cai faced the sky as she cried a bowl of tears in her heart. Life is such a tragedy. Let go of that girl, warrior, crazy leveler, spoke candidly. Ideal height 1.7 m, warlock, seemed to have a vaguely romantic relationship with let go of that girl, innocent, spoke frankly. Amidst their conversation, they spotted a person climbing up. Ruffling his fur, he changed to a human form. He headed towards the group and smiled as he walked, hey, hey, hey. What you all are doing is not right. How can you get a lycanthrope to help you fight wolves? Haven't you heard the saying? We were originally grown from the same root. Why should we hound each other to death with such impatience? Let go of that. Girl jumped up and said to the lycanthrope with tears in his eyes, for sees, he really managed to find you. I thought he'd just find some noob to satisfy me. How much do you think you can take? The lycanthrope cleric said. Perseus immediately pushed away. Let go of that girl who was intending to hug him enthusiastically. He walked directly towards ECI. Chapter 14 Trust is a premium ability. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gong Ziyu. I've heard a lot about you. Perseus smiled at Yi Ci while extending his hand. Heard of her? Yi Ci was puzzled. The game was still quite new. Where could he have heard about her from? Yi Ci shook Perseus' hand politely. It'd be rude to leave him hanging. She asked with a hint of curiosity, whom have you heard of me from? I was doing a quest in Leakin Black Forest when I met a friend. He told me that he came across an elven huntress with mad skills. I wasn't going to come when Golden invited me, but when I heard that there was an equally skilled elven huntress in the party, I couldn't resist the urge to witness myself just how good you are. Upon his explanation, Yi Ci sweated. Are you talking about lukewarm water? It was the only idiot with zero sense of direction that she knew. Perseus did not give Yi Ci an answer. He sat down and started eating. He smiled at Yi Ci, his handsome face made it seem as if he was pondering something. Yi Ci was no stranger to this kind of feeling. It was a feeling of distrust. If she had come across such an expression in her previous life, she would definitely cuss at the person. In this world, however, she felt that it no longer mattered. Making friends with a sincere heart was more important to her now. She sat down and continued munching on her food, her face revealing no inner emotions. Perseus observed Yi Ci for a moment before suddenly saying, yes, it's lukewarm water. Yi Ci was stunned for a moment. She was not sure if it had been done it on purpose or if Perseus was typically slow to respond to questions. She nodded, I'm not that good. Perseus raised his eyebrows in disbelief, as if he were about to say something. Golden Man stood up and said, I'm sure you guys are done replenishing. Let's go. After wolfing down the last of the biscuit and washing it down with a few gulps of water, Yi Ci stood up and followed her companions into Heishan's lair. Yi Ci had never been to this dungeon before. It did not even exist in the forums during her past life. There were two possibilities to this. Either this dungeon was never discovered or the ones who discovered it kept it a secret. The reasons did not matter to Yi Ci. The dark damp cave did not scare Yi Ci. Instead, it filled her with excitement. The excitement of exploring the unknown was very precious to Yi Ci. She had explored every known dungeon in Fate during her past life. She had never expected to find anything new. Why are caves always so dark? Can't they make a more scenic dungeon? Ideal height 1.7 m slipped and gave the ground a big hug due to the darkness. She began to grumble after getting up. Yi Ci smiled. There were a lot of scenic dungeons in the later stages of Fate. The scenes were so beautiful that the players would even forget that they were there to fight monsters. Beautiful scenery. You're talking about the sightseeing area. Let go of that. Girl rubbed his nose and squinted, why are there no lights? Elves can see pretty well in the dark, lycans have night vision, dwarves can do pretty good in the dark as well, but as for gnomes. Perseus looked worriedly at ideal height 1.7 m. Ideal height 1.7 m snorted, we'll carve our own path if one is not provided to us. You don't have to worry about me. She took a torch out from her inventory and handed it to the tallest person, Golden Man, here, take it so that everyone can see. Golden Man explored with caution in the front of the group. Not even the quietest of sounds were present in the dungeon. It was awfully quiet. Yi Ci walked at the rear of the group, protecting their cleric, for Cs, and ideal height 1.7 m. Clerics were aggro magnets in dungeons. If the warriors did not taunt the monsters that appeared in time, all of them would be heading straight for the cleric. Ideal height 1.7 m was a mage and also a soft target. An elite monster in a dungeon like this could kill her within 2 hits. Yi Ci walked silently at the back of the group with her bow drawn. She was ready to shoot at anything that moved. For Cs took a look at Yi Ci, only seeing her calm and expressionless face. He thought that there was a hint of excitement as their eyes met briefly. Yi Ci realized that 4Cs was looking at her and she asked, "What? Is something wrong? You're calm." 4Cs was straightforward. There was nothing to be afraid of. A smile lit up Yi Ci's bored face. It's a dungeon. It's either you or the monsters that are going to die. There's no third option. 4Cs was puzzled. Gongziyu was very different from the female players he knew. Death is painful. Escaping is my forte. Yi Ci let out a forced laugh. As long as you're not dead, we won't get annihilated. You trust me that much? 4Cs did not expect that answer. Why would she trust him when they just met? I see you're close friends with Golden Man and let go of that girl. If they trust you, you won't be that bad. Yi Ci concluded. Everybody else would come to the same conclusion. This has nothing to do with trust. Yi Ci surveyed their surrounding while taking to 4Cs. Her voice was soft, a special kind of soft only possessed by elves. It was music to the ears. 4Cs did not reply immediately. He was deep in thoughts. Yi Ci took in a deep breath and said, "Trust is a premium ability that couldn't be owned by everyone. I was just trying to lean in and hope that I could," she continued with a short pause, "do it." 4C's expression changed, he could not describe how he felt. He was silent. He glanced meaningfully at Yi Ci and said with a playful tone, "Hey, Gongziyu, I'll entrust my life and Ideal's life to you since you're so skillful. Don't let us die." It was Yi Ci's turn to be stunned. Looking at 4Cs, she could feel a pressure building up within her. It was heavy, but she felt at ease. This pressure is called trust. Sure. Her lips formed into a rare smile. The silence and darkness was very unsettling. F***ck, we must be lost. Or was the game bugged? We've been walking for 10 minutes and we haven't seen jack shit, shouted Let Go of that girl who was walking side by side with Golden Man. Stay calm. You must remain calm. Golden Man kept his calm. He walked forward slowly while slowly surveying his surroundings. He was as steady as an old monk. A chill crept down Yi Ci's spine all of a sudden. She held her breath and mouthed silently, "It's here." At the same time, Golden Man halted and spoke at the same time as Yi Ci, "It's here." Before they could finish their sentence, a blinding light flashed into their vision. "Ladies and gentlemen, why are you trespassing my territory?" A crisp voice resounded in the area. Yi Ci squinted and saw a wooden door not far from them. A rat man stood close by and shouted, "Let's welcome our guests in the name of our great leader." As the door slowly opened, Golden Man's ears twitched. He shouted, "There are monsters behind the door. Be careful." The group prepared themselves for battle. Nevertheless, the wolf pack that swarmed out of the doorway was an awe-inspiring sight. When one side fought with unequal numbers, the speed of their movement and the ferocity of their attacks was most important. The only one that could deal damage to the wolf pack was the ranged class. And among the 5, the only one who was a ranged character with high agility was Yi Ci. "Gonzi, you." Yi Ci was already in position before Golden Man could finish his sentence. She jumped onto a lamp post and suspended herself in the air with her high balance. She fired rapidly at the lead wolf. Yi Ci's extremely high balance allowed her to jump between lamp posts. The wolf pack's aggro was handled by the two melee characters of Golden Man and Let Go of That Girl. They easily picked off the wolves that were already gravely injured by Yi Si. To the four of her companions, Yi Si was like a kite unaffected by gravity, raining death as she soared through the air. Chapter 15 Heishan's Lair. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The five of them had never been in the same party before, but they fought as if they were familiar with each other. Tisk, Let Go of That Girl clicked his tongue and praised Yi Si. No wonder you said that she's good. I've never seen a huntress with such balance before. It's almost like she could handle this alone. If her attack damage was higher, I think she could have finished solo. For C's, what do you think? Golden Man ignored his companion's praise and asked for C's, the latter of whom was doing his job and healing the party. For C's stretched himself and sighed, the pressure is real. Let Go of That Girl shouted, hey. 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 Do your job. I'm risking my life here. Heal me, don't let me die. Somebody else was working hard up there and you're complaining at a mere scratch. Ideal Height 1.7M did not miss the chance to make fun of Let Go of That Girl. For C's looked at Let Go of That Girl, then at Yi Si. He appeared to be deep in thought. You're not yourself today. You're actually doing a good job as a healer. Golden Man could not believe that 4C's was sticking to his job. I've always been a good healer. 4C's was proud of himself. Nobody is as good as I am. Yi Si could see everything clearly in the air. Get past that door, there's a bridge beyond it. We can make a stand there. Yi Si shouted. The group sped up and managed to clear away the last of the wolf pack, getting onto the bridge. The dungeon was easier after that. It was almost like they were steamrolling through the entire dungeon. The bridge was so narrow that Let Go of That Girl alone could block the entire way just by standing in the middle, allowing only two wolves to attack them at the same time. With such excellent terrain, they could even defeat an entire army. For C's was the one who did the least among the five. He sat on the ledge, yawning while healing his comrades. Out of boredom, he looked at the damage output ranking. He was not surprised to see that Let Go of That Girl, their usual main damage dealer, was no longer ranked first. Gongzi Yu was, without a doubt, the one who dealt the most damage. Her damage output was 35% of the total damage output. For C's could not help but steal a glance at Yi Si. Few hunters or huntresses had managed to deal more damage than the tank. They tended not to attract aggression from the monsters. This huntress. Her gorgeous movements and kiting were not the only thing she was good at. Yi Si could feel that somebody was looking at her. As she turned around, she locked eyes with 4C's. He did not avert his gaze. Instead, a lazy smile formed on his lips. Yi Si did not suspect much, as she was never one to care about somebody else's thoughts. It would be too tiring for her. The group have also nearly cleared the bridge. The wolves on the other side of the bridge obviously thinned out. Only a few gray wolves lurked around, but they were visibly larger than the wolves earlier on. Their attributes identified them as elites. We're facing against elites, put your backs into it. Golden Man reminded the party. He received no reply. The others were already in action before he spoke. Even 4C's that appeared bored a few moments earlier charged into the fray. What a bunch of animals. Golden Man, who had been left behind, sighed before he charged out to join his companions. There was basically nothing difficult about the dungeon. The only situation that placed everyone in danger was at the part before the bridge. They could easily get surrounded by the wolves, therefore teamwork was very important. After that, everything was very straightforward except for the occasional elite wolf. They effortlessly reached a staircase. Yi Si leaped onto a huge rock beside the staircase and surveyed the surrounding before jumping back down. Heishan is in there. His hit points are high, around 100,000. This we can handle. But for the three guardians in front of him, it seems like their movements are linked. I'll take care of two of them. You guys concentrate your attacks on the remaining one. Let Go of That Girl drank a defense potion and rushed onto the staircase with the three guardian wolves in hot pursuit. The group, or as Golden Man said, the group of animals, pounced on the wolves. Of the group, two of them were listed on the rankings. One of them was a moving cannon, and the other a ferocious huntress. With the aid of a basically useless cleric, they took care of the three guardians in under 10 minutes. Go go go, hurry up, go for the loots. Let Go of That Girl rubbed his hands happily, laughing at the corpse of the three guardian wolves. Yi Si stood far away. She was afraid that her black hand aura would affect the loot. Golden Man thought that she was merely being shy and said, Gongzi, what are you doing? Go pick up the loot. Yi Si smiled and said, never mind, I'll leave it to you guys. Your damage output is the highest, you should do it. Golden Man pushed Yi Si towards one of the corpses. My hands are very unlucky. Yi Si was helpless. Don't worry, the so-called black hand means that you'll get things that we don't need. But with our current situation, I think you'll get lucky no matter what. Yi Si looked into the sky. She was speechless. Her black hand was different. Her black hand would ensure that there were no loots. The black hand aura had always followed Yi Si. It had always been by her side. Always. The corpse that Yi Si looted contained nothing, while the other two yielded 3 blue equipments. Let Go That Girl looked at Yi Si and cried out in anguish after failing to obtain the weapon that he dreamt of, you sure as hell are unlucky. Yi Si shrugged and sighed, you made me do this. Heishan was a paper tiger without his 3 guardians. Nevertheless, he lasted for almost an hour just because of his immense number of hit points. Let Go of That Girl was the one that looted the corpse, and his luck was good. The corpse yielded 4 blue equipment, as well as some potions and materials. There was also a key that was a quest item. The description was vague. You might be able to use it at the cellar of the Red Monastery. The Red Monastery. It was a 50-man-party LVL 40 dungeon. Yi Si remembered the time when she went to the monastery with a group. There was a mysterious door in the cellar, but they had never been able to open it. Looks like they had just found the key. Each of them received the quest item. They added each other as friends and promised to go to the Red Monastery to complete the quest when the time came. They divided the loot and each of them received at least 2 or 3 items, with the exception of Yi Si who only received a gauntlet that doubled her strength. Golden Man felt sorry for Yi Si, and he gave her all the potions and materials looted from Heishan. Yi Si happily accepted. This dungeon is so lit. It's easy but it gives a lot of experience points and good gear, although we don't know when it will reset. Let Go of That Girl was deeply satisfied from his experience bar, which was already half full at LVL 9. I'll go see if I can find some quest item, said Yi Si, who was the first one to have cleared up her items. She saw a pile of rope ladder glistening with a light which hinted it could be picked up. It could be the quest item. Something fell out from beneath the pile of rope ladders as Yi Si lifted it up. Yi Xiu picked up the object and a system notification chimed in. Black Ring was bound to you. It was a very curious case. For an item in Fate to be bound, a player was usually required to bind it through Soul Bind Mage. She took a look at the ring stats. It was a gray equipment, something with the lowest quality. It had 0 stats, as if it were merely for decoration. Walking out of the house, Yi Si showed the ring to her companions. They waved it off as a bug, and since it was bound to Yi Si, it belonged to her. Yi Si felt guilty. She did not obtain that item fairly, even though it was a simple gray equipment. She attempted to pay Golden Man with 10 gold coins as compensation. Her action, however, unsettled the group. They refused the compensation while 4Cs jokingly said, if you really mind about it that much, the next time you obtain some sort of god-tier weapon, give it to me. Although it was a simple joke, Yi Si found closure in her heart. The group left the dungeon and parted ways. Frodo accepted the rope ladder from Yi Si, but he maintained a glare at her without explanation. He sat on a rock and refused to speak with Yi Si. It was already late, and if Yi Si did not go for dinner soon, her parents would be worrying about her again. She logged off the game. Yi Si made some food to satiate her hunger after climbing out of the gaming cabin. She immediately received a phone call from her parents checking in on her. After hanging up the call, her phone rang again before she could go into the shower. It was an unfamiliar number. After a moment of hesitation, Yi Si connected the call. "Hello. Who is this?" "Little Si, it's me." Chapter 16,000 Sunsets. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The voice was familiar. It was so familiar, yet Yi Si could not be sure who it belonged to. "What? We've just talked in the game, and you've forgotten about me already. It seems that I have to call you more often," said the person in a cheerful tone. Yi Tsang asked Yi Si with uncertainty after a brief hesitation. "I thought you'd forgotten me." Yi Tsang laughed out loud. It was just like so many years ago. Nothing had changed. Yi Si had a sense of vertigo. It was as if she had never experienced the 10 years of her past life, never had done anything to hurt her friends. They were still an adorable bunch. "Let's have a meal together tomorrow." Yi Tsang stated his purpose after noticing that Yi Si was silent. Yi Si had a sudden realization. She remembered something. Yi Tsang had also given her a call in her past life. However, she rejected his invitation as she had been busy leveling up in the game. She would never repeat the same mistake in this life. "Sure, where to?" You agreed." It was Yi Tsang's turn to be shocked. "What? Is it strange that I've accepted your invitation?" "No, it's just that you're a madman when it comes to leveling up. I thought you'd decline my invitation if I asked you out for a meal." Yi Tsang answered after scratching his head. He understood Yi Si less than he had thought. Yi Si felt bitter. Looks like she was quite despicable in her last life. But she immediately became happy. She had the chance to turn over a new leaf. "There's no such thing. Tell me where and when and I'll be there in time." Yi Tsang immediately told her the venue and both of them hung up after a brief conversation. Early in the morning on the next day, Yi Si went out after cleaning her room. The city was named as the city most suited for human life due to its Go Green projects. Yi Si could smell the fresh air right after leaving her room. Yi Si took a deep breath and exhaled, as if she wanted to eliminate the years of accumulated sorrow. Yi Si decided to walk to their gathering spot as it was still early. She was jovial for the entire journey to the point where she even broke into a small jog. Although she was slightly out of breath, it felt good to be alive. Yi Si spotted Lu Chang right away after reaching the spot where they were supposed to meet up. She had been pacing back and forth in a pair of jeans in front of the restaurant. Lu Tsang waved at Yi Si and she ran towards her, gasping for air. "What? You participated in a marathon or something?" Lu Chang laughed at Yi Si and dragged her upstairs. Yi Tsang and Dong Yin were already there. They were still the same. Yi Tsang was busy with his handheld computer while Dong Yin was peering at the screen from his side. They would sometimes have a heated discussion about something. Both of them raised their head after Yi Si entered the room and they waved at her, greeting her warmly. It was all the same, just like back then in their childhood. A waiter handed them the menu right after they were seated. After shirking the menu around, it landed with Yi Si. She was stunned. Truth to be told, Yi Si never knew the favorite dishes of her friends. She should have known them well since they grew up together. Yi Si was overwhelmed with guilt. She knew very little about the people around her. Yi Si awkwardness was noticed by Lu Chang. She took the menu from her with a smile and said, "You got me so many equipment yesterday. As a reward, I shall offer you my service." She ordered everyone's favorite dishes. Yi Si sighed in relief. She stole a glance at Lu Chang, who happened to be looking at her. They smiled at each other knowingly. The food was quickly served, but there was an extra set of cutlery on the table. Yi Si looked at the set of cutlery and asked, "Is there someone that was supposed to be here as well?" Yi Tsang took a look at his watch. He did not seem to mind, he will be here soon. Don't mind him. Let's eat. The voice of a man could be heard even before Yi Tsang could finish his sentence. How unkind. You started without me, you brat. Yi Si and her friends raised their head. A well-built man walked into the room. His pace was quick but steady. His hair was cut nicely and short. Yi Tsang stood up and welcomed the man, giving him a tight hug. Dong Yin and Lu Chang greeted the man with smiles of their own as well. Although they did not offer to hug him, they seemed to be familiar with the man. Yi Si did not know the man. She merely stood up and greeted him. Yi Tsang let go of the man after a short while and showed him to his seat excitedly. He said to Yi Si, "Little Si, hurry, allow me to introduce to you my instructor when I was in the military academy. Now we're like brothers." Without waiting for Yi Tsang to finish his introduction, the man extended his arm to Yi Si. "Don't listen to Yi Tsang. What instructor? I'm just a normal citizen. The name's He Xiao. You must be Yi Si, right? I've heard a lot about you. I've tried to invite you several times earlier on, it's good to finally meet you." Earlier on. Yi Si couldn't help but remember. For her, it was something as far as 10 years ago. There was no way she could remember that. She shook He Xiao's hand. It was the hand of a soldier, firm and rough. "It's nice to meet you too. I was quite busy back then, I'm really sorry." Yi Si nodded with a smile. "There's no need to be sorry. Since we have the chance to be acquainted, we're friends." He Xiao was carefree. He did not care about the little details. The group continued eating after their brief introduction. The atmosphere was harmonious. Fate was soon brought up. "Brother He, are you playing Fate as well? I've tried asking you but you never gave me an answer. I will get a definite answer from you today." Yi Tsang smiled at He Xiao. "This is exactly why I've asked you guys out." He Xiao looked at the group. "I'm playing Fate, and I've decided to form a guild once I've reached LVL 10. Wow! You're forming a guild." Dong Yin seemed to adore He Xiao. Her eyes lit up whenever he spoke. "Most of the members would be my retired comrades. Brother He, what's your in.game name? I'll add you as a friend later." Thousand Sunsets. As the rest continued their conversation, Yi Si was stupefied after hearing that name. She raised her head and stared at He Xiao. So this was Thousand Sunsets. Thousand Sunsets was not quite famous at the earlier stages of the game. His fame came from the guild that he created, Steel-Blooded Battle Spear. From her knowledge of her past life, Thousand Sunsets was a man of honor. He was a former military man. The entire guild was structured like the military, and the main force of his guild was formed by the best of the best. Their guild was different from the other big guilds. It was formed after they'd started playing Fate. Its growth, however, was astonishing. They became one of the nation's top 10 guilds in just 3 years. Thousand Sunsets' hard work could not be overlooked. On a personal level, Thousand Sunsets was very good at making friends. He had his way of making friends with people of different background. There was once a saying in Fate, "It's okay for you to not recognize the top 10 players of Fate, but it's unforgivable if you do not know Thousand Sunsets." This was the proof that Thousand Sunsets was very famous in fate. Yi Si had crossed path with Thousand Sunsets before, but it was not a good meeting. At that time, fate officially opened the Guild War event. Steel-blooded Battle Spear was the defender. Blizzard Gate was the attacker. Thousand Sunsets sought help from Yi Si through Yi Tsang 1 week before the war, as she was the #1 human sorceress. He paid her well to help defend their city. Yi Si did not decline. Blizzard Gate reached out to Yi Si and offered to pay 3 times more than Thousand Sunsets for her aid. 3 days later, the reinforcement that Thousand Sunsets was hoping for appeared in the midst of his enemy. Steel-blooded Battle Spear and Blizzard Gate were equally matched. He was trying to break the balance by inviting Yi Si over to his side. It did not end well for him. In the end, Steel-blooded Battle Spear was dealt a crippling blow. The defeat they suffered took a long time to recover. This affected their progress in clearing dungeons, and many of their members left because of that. Eventually the guild was nothing but a ghost of its former self, soon fading away from everyone's memories. This was why Yi Tsang and Dong Yin had cut off all ties with Yi Si. It also destroyed Yi Si's relationship with Lu Chang. The past conflict was like a dream to Yi Si. She had never thought that Yi Tsang was contacting her for the sake of Thousand Sunsets. There were times when Yi Si had thought that she had everything under control. She was wrong. Little Si. Brother, he is talking to you. Dong Yin noticed that Yi Si was unresponsive and nudged her from under the table. Yi Si was pulled back into reality. What? We're joining Brother He's guild when it's formed. Let's go together. Dong Yin was so excited her face turned a faint shade of red. Chapter 17 The Mysterious Ring. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Yi Si did not agree to Dong Yin's words and instead glanced at He Xiao was still smiling at her. It's no big deal. To me, it's just friends playing a game together. We could take care of each other. It's okay if you have other plans, we can add each other as friends. It's the same anyways. Okay, I'll join your guild. Yi Si gave her answer. Her decision to join Steel-blooded Battle Spear was not because of her guilt for her past life's betrayal. It was because of Yi Tsang, Dong Yin, and Lu Chang. She did not have to do everything alone if she joined them. I told you she would agree. Lu Chang hollered, hugging Yi Si and smiling at Dong Yin. Yi Si laughed along and the 5 of them continued their meal with glee. He Xiao parted with the 4 after the meal. Yi Si was planning to continue leveling up, but Dong Yin proposed a trip to the nearby theme park. The 4 of them went to the theme park for an entire day before finally parting ways at 8 p.m. Yi Si did not log into the game that night. She slept after giving her parents a phone call. Yi Si slept like the dead that night. Even her circadian rhythm failed to wake her up. It was already midday before she had finally woken up. After a light meal, Yi Si tidied herself up and logged into the game. Yi Si received a private message right after she went online. It was from Golden Man, asking her if she had left the newbie village. Yi Si was still in Wolf Canyon. We're going to explore the abandoned mine in Moonfall City. Are you free? It's not possible at the moment. I'm still at the spot where I went offline that day. I need quite some time to get to Moonfall City from here. Yi Si calculated the distance between her location and Moonfall City. She needed at least 2 hours to get to Moonfall City. Okay then, we'll go first. Remember to get in touch when you have the time. Golden Man said in a regretful tone and cut off the voice connection. Yi Si surveyed her surroundings. Frodo was still sitting at the same spot. She did not mind him and was preparing to leave. Frodo shrieked unexpectedly, "Hey! Big One, you're walking away with my stuff." Yi Si was baffled. She turned around and saw a furious Frodo. "What have I taken away from you? I gave that ladder back to you." Humph, Frodo knew not to trust the wretched elves. They never speak the truth. Frodo was so angry that he jumped up and down, waving his fists at Yi. My ring. My precious ring. It's with you. Ring. Yi produced the bound black ring from and asked, do you happen to be talking about this? Yes. This is it. Frodo rushed towards Yi in an attempt to grab the black ring. She hid the ring away and asked, don't you think you have some explanations to make? Like that, what exactly is this ring? Something that was important to a hidden NPC, and what's more, one that automatically bound itself to her. There must be something more to the grey equipment than what it appeared to be. Yi could feel that the ring was nothing ordinary, but she would need to figure out the way to discover its secrets from Frodo. Frodo glared at Yi, looking as if he could spew fire from his eyes. He breathed heavily and his face was so red that it looked like he would explode. Frodo will never tell you where that thing came from. Frodo will never tell you that the precious thing is related to the Dark Lord Naga. Yi nearly laughed out loud. There was a gnome NPC that had been labeled as log-headed by the players. Yi held the ring up high. Frodo tried his best to grab the ring away from her, but his height denied him success. Yi grinned and patted Frodo's head, Yeep, you'll never tell me that the ring has anything to do with Dark Lord Naga. Yi kept the ring into her inventory and pretended that she was leaving the area. She did not expect it when Frodo jumped at her and shouted, give it back to Frodo. Frodo's name was Green. It meant that the players could not attack him. His tackle caught Yi off balance and she nearly fell. She managed to steady herself, trying to dislodge the log-head. Gnomes are known by their small size and high level of intelligence. Of course, their intelligence had nothing to do with them being log-heads. Although having a disadvantage in size, Frodo held on to Yi with dear life. In the end, he could not escape the fate of being grabbed by the hem of his shirt. Yi was gasping for air by then. Having low strength was such a pain in the neck. If only she was a warrior, she could have sent Frodo flying. She lifted Frodo away from her by the hem of his shirt. Frodo furiously swung his fist at Yi, but he was just too small. I have something to ask you. No. Frodo will not speak to this sly elf. Yi raised her eyebrows. The NPC did not understand the situation that he was in. She did not waste her breath on him. She shook Frodo up and down violently and the gnomes screamed in fear. Gnomes had very sharp voices. With Frodo's screaming, Yi felt as if her eardrums were going to burst. Kind and beautiful elf, what do you need from me? Although gnomes were log-headed, they were still afraid to die. His behavior showed a 180-degree change after Yi stopped shaking him. What is this? Yi took out the ring and showed it to Frodo. Frodo had been seeing stars before, but his vision recovered immediately. He could only look helplessly at the ring and replied, it's something precious. What is so precious about it? It's something that can open Dark Lord Naga's vault. Frodo rubbed his hands together, staring at the ring, his face red. Through the ring, one can acquire the power of Naga, the power of world domination. How do I get it? Frodo gasped as if he was roused from some sort of trance. He looked at Yi with a surprised expression and covered his mouth. I can't tell you, I can't tell you. Try as she might, Yi could not force an answer out of Frodo aside, leaving him to mumble on, I can't tell you, incessantly. There was no longer any clues from him. Yi let go of her hands and Frodo fell onto the ground with a thump. Without looking back, Yi jumped onto one of the branches and left Wolf Canyon through the dense forest. The power of Naga. Dark Lord Naga was one of the hidden quests of fate. There were hints pointing towards him in the early stages of the game, but he only appeared after 9 years of fate in 100-man LVL 100 dungeon, Death's Abyss. Death's Abyss was the biggest dungeon cluster in Fate. This cluster of dungeons had a very high difficulty. Even before her rebirth, no guild in the world had ever cleared even the easiest introduction dungeon to the Death's Abyss dungeons, the Gates of Flame. A ring that had something to do with Naga. A ring that gave its bearer the power of Naga. Yi Si could still remember the time when players attempted to clear the Gates of Flame. Naga was always hidden behind the dungeon's bosses. Nobody had ever laid eyes on him. His mere breath could annihilate an entire squadron of players. Naga's strength could no longer be described by the word insane. It was absolutely overpowered. How could this ring contain the power of Naga? Despite her doubts, Yi Si was very excited. However, the ring seemed normal no matter how she looked at it. A flash of light appeared from the ring after Yi Si wore it on her finger. She took a closer look at the ring, and noticed that its stats changed. Mysterious ring. Gray equipment strength +2 level required. 0 bound 2. Gongzi Yu special attributes. Growable. The stats of the ring are growable. Yi Si was stunned. Only God-tier equipments in Fate possessed this attribute. How could a gray equipment possess such a quality? Could Frodo be telling the truth? Yi Si did not put too much thought into it. Naga's appearance was still a long way away. She had no need to delve into the matter. The additional 2 points in strength was satisfying enough for Yi Si, who had been longing for an increase in her attack damage. Chapter 18 A New Pet. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Quite some players reached LVL 10 after Yi Si's 1 day of absence. However, there were still a lot of new players appearing in the newbie village. Yi Si returned to the newbie village and handed 100 wolf's eyeballs to Zal. Oh, young huntress, I must say that you're fast. You've brought me so much loot in such a short amount of time. You're a qualified hunter. You're certainly a huntress worthy of inheriting this skill. Zal handed the Hunter's Mark skill book to Yi Si without too much nonsense. Yi Si clapped her hands together after receiving the skill book. The skill book turned into a bright white light and entered her body. You have learned Hunter's Mark. The system notification chimed in immediately. It's done. Yi Si grinned after hearing the notification. With that skill, she was a true huntress. Talent could be accessed after a character hit LVL 10, and Yi Si could wait no longer. A huntress's talent was divided into 3 different categories: pet talent, shooting talent, and survival talent. One does not simply get the salmon along with the bear's paw. The choice of talent worked the same way. Talent points were limited. To create the strongest character with such limited talent points had always been a topic of debate among Fate's forums. Most of the popular topics on the forums were about the combination between class, race, and talent distribution. Every one of them had their own point. Of course. If one had unlimited talent points, this was not a matter to be worried about. Yi Si had 11 talent points with her, 10 of which were from leveling up and 1 from completing the village chief's side quest. She studied the first row of talents available to her. She maxed out the 5 points of pet endurance, distributed 3 points to upgrade Hunter's Mark as well as 3 more points to the survival talent, and upgraded Falcon's protection. Yi Si's combination was mediocre. Most players would agree that one should focus on only a single category of talent, leaving aside the other 2 merely as support. Yi Si, however, was more concerned about the talent points earned from side quests. She greedily distributed points to all 3 categories. Yi Si's Hunter's Mark and Falcon's protection had significant changes despite the few talent points distributed to each skill. Falcon's protection had an increase of 30% attack damage. Hunter's Mark's increased range by 15 and its ranged damage was increased by 30%. The talent points distribution was mediocre, but the changes they brought to Yi Si's skills had a major impact. The only thing that Yi Si lacked was a pet. Yi Si headed straight to Icy Cave. In hard difficulty of Icy Cave, there would be an elite spider following every rat man. The spider was Yi Si's target. Monsters were visibly stronger in the difficult version of Icy Cave. However, with her empowered Hunter's Mark and Falcon's protection, it was not hard for Yi Si. As Yi Si approached Shatter, she heard a low growl emanating from a bush not far from her. A powerful figure was walking between the shrubs. Haxi the Ripper. It was a wandering boss that had a 1 in 1,000th chance of appearing in Icy Cave. It was the best pet for a pre.LV30 hunter or huntress. Haxi was not part of Yi Si's plan. To run into something that had only 1 in 1,000th chance of appearing was simply too hard. There was once a hunter who waited every single day for 3 months in Icy Cave for Haxi to appear. It did not. Yi Si did not expect that she would run into Haxi in her first trip to Icy Cave on difficult. She decided not to go after the spider and approached Haxi with stealth activated. Immediately after she had gotten within range, Yi Si exited stealth and attacked Haxi the Ripper ferociously. A huntress's capture pet could be casted under any condition, but the chance of success would be higher the lower the hit points of a target monster. She jumped left and right, kiting the jet. Black Panther. She casted the Light of Enticement when Haxi's health was at 5%. Light of Enticement was a skill under the category of pet rearing used to capture pets. There were also Pet Summon, Disband Pet, Release Pet, and Pet Heal. Light of Enticement had a 12 seconds channeling time which could not be disrupted by any monsters unless the caster died. Haxi the Ripper was a wandering boss in the difficult dungeon and its attack damage was high. Yi Si drank an assortment of potions such as Defense Potion, Agility Potion, and Health Potion without stop during the 12 seconds channeling time of Light of Enticement. It was the longest 12 seconds of her life. Haxis launched the fiercest and the most desperate of attacks under the effect of Light of Enticement. Yi Si almost gave up due to the pain, but the potions she brought along allowed her to go on. A golden flash emanated from Haxi the Ripper after the 12 seconds. Haxi was successfully entrapped. Yi Si herself was not in a good condition. She had only 11% of her hit points left. Her clothing were torn in several places and she could feel immense pain all over her body. She gulped down a bottle of health potion before checking Haxi's stats. Name: Panther Owner. Gongzi Yu level. 1 hit points. 1630/1630 stamina. 1300/1300 skills. Scratch, Taunt, Speed Boost attribute. Wise, Loyal Loyalty. 10. It was truly high grade. The happiness which arose from looking at Haxi's stats could not be described by words. She had never seen pets with such attributes before even in her last life. Pets would normally possess qualities such as tame, honest, smart, loyal, sly, bad-tempered, deceptive and picky. Wise was the rarest quality of all. Although she had never really calculated the rate of pets having wise as their quality, Yi Si had come across a lot of pets with different attributes. No more than 10 of them possessed the quality wise, and all of them had only one quality. Wise pets possessed a higher level of intelligence and they would have a higher chance of learning skills on their own as opposed to their counterparts. Loyal meant that the loyalty of a pet could be easily obtained, and it would almost never abandon its owner no matter how bad a situation was. Hunters in Fate treated their pets almost like their own parents. No hunter would waste their time or the space of their pet slot on a normal pet. Most of their pets were elite monsters. The process of acquiring them was tedious, and if they ran away, the invested money and experience points would all be for naught. Yi Si looked at Haxi who was beside her. It was not as fierce as before. It stared at Yi Si with its big, glassy eye. When it learned that Yi Si was looking back at it, it lowered its head shyly and licked its paw. "You're acting cute. You must be acting cute." The system notification chimed in, "Do you want to rename your pet?" "Yes. Please name your pet." OL, free. Are you sure you want to name your pet as OL3? You can only name your pet once. Please name it carefully. Confirm. Naming successful. Although OL3 was loyal, this didn't guarantee that it wouldn't run away. Before a pet's loyalty reached 100, any one of them could run away. There was only one way to raise a pet's loyalty: feed it. Let's be honest, pets were always vigorous eaters. Yi Si handed her biscuits to OL3. It sniffed at the food and turned its head to the side with an expression that clearly said, "This is not what I want. Your pet does not like this kind of food." The system notification chimed in again just as Yi Si was about to figure out OL3's favorite food. Favorite food? Meat, poultry, or fish. Of course, it would be better if it was cooked. She finally understood something. The reason behind why hunters were usually the top 10 cooks in Fate, it was all for their pets. There was nothing she could do. Yi Si munched on the biscuit ignored by OL3 and handed to it a few pieces of meat. OL3 did not hold back. It gulped down 5 pieces of roasted meat before letting out a satisfied burp. Yi Si took a look at its loyalty. It increased exponentially, having risen to 15 points already. There was still a long way for OL3's loyalty to reach 100. With a pet of her own, Yi Si could attack the 3 bosses of Icy Cave without fear. As a boss-grade pet, OL3 performed well. It fought ferociously. Against the onslaught of 3 bosses simultaneously, however, even an angel could not hold the line. Within moments, OL3 lost its life and Yi Si fled from the dungeon. Yi Si summoned OL3 right after exiting the dungeon. It was feeling sad and its loyalty dropped by 3. It's like trying to serve a prince. It can't starve and it can't die. Yi Si grumbled at the rough fate of hunters in the not-so-distant future while feeding pieces of roasted meat to OL3. As OL3 was happily chomping down on its meal, Yi Si could hear. Chapter 19 Icy Cave Hard Difficulty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As OL3 was happily devouring his meal, Yi Si could hear the chime of a private message. Little Si, are you there? It was Lefty, Yi-tsung. Yes. Anything going on, Yi-tsung? Brother, he created his guild just now. We've all joined it. Let's join in too. Steel-blooded battle spear was formed. It did not even take 2 days. Yi Si was stunned. Okay, get somebody to add me. Yi Si replied after Yi-tsung blabbered impatiently. Sure, wait a moment. Yi Si continued feeding roasted meat to OL3 after Yi-tsung's voice faded away. She planned to learn cooking in the city. She could no longer satisfy OL3's appetite. Peacock Blue invited you to join Steel-Blooded Battle Spear. Confirm. System will teleport you to the guild encampment once for free. Do you want to be teleported? Yi Si thought about it for a moment. The guild encampment leads straight into the city. If she teleported at this moment, it would save her the time of traveling. Since she had caught a pet and could not clear Icy Cave on hard mode, why not go to the guild encampment and then select a major city to bind her city recalling crystal to? Yi Si selected the option yes, and she was transported along with OL3 to the encampment. Steel-Blooded Battle Spear was obviously still recruiting. The encampment was chaotic with people walking all over the place. The encampment was still lacking a lot of necessary facilities, and the guild chat was bustling with activities as well. Yi Si walked towards the NPC guard in the guild encampment after muting her guild chat. Steel-Blooded Battle Spear was still a level 1 guild. The encampment NPC could provide guild members with a buff that would increase their hit points for 10% for 3 hours. The NPC could also transport guild members to different main cities. After receiving her buff, Yi Si confirmed the location of Steel-Blooded Battle Spear members in each of the main cities. After making comparisons, Yi Si chose the Red Lake City, which was not bound by any steel-blooded battle spear members to the city recalling crystal. She paid 1 silver coin and was transported to the city. Red Lake City was very developed. The huge red lake in the middle of the city was its namesake. This was a rather scenic city. Doing business in the city could be a chore for someone who could not afford a boat ride. One must swim across the lake or traverse half the city to get to their destination. Yi Si located and reported to the mayor in the city hall. After skipping his dialogue, Yi Si was directed to an administrative officer by the mayor. Yi Si bound her city recalling crystal with the help of the officer and received a repeatable quest. Clear away the rubbish around Red Lake City. Similar quests were offered in every major city. But these quests were generally avoided by players at the start of the game as they had low experience, gold, and prestige reward. Yi Si knew, however, that carrying on such quest would raise her prestige in the city and allow her to receive a special reward from the mayor. Regrettably, Yi Si had yet to receive any special rewards from a city as she had always been switching her bound city to avoid assassination attempts by her rivals. The special reward was obtained by doing the repeatable quests. If the quest was interrupted, the player had to start the quest all over again. As Yi Si was carrying a broomstick around cleaning the city, Lu Chang was looking for her in the guild encampment. Lefty and Gleaming Sunshine were finally LVL 8 while Lu Chang was LVL 8. She was planning to look for a healer, whereupon the 5 of them would attempt to clear Icy Cave on hard difficulty. Yi Si could not be found in the guild encampment. She could not even be contacted through private messages. Lu Chang was so anxious that she nagged at Lefty and Gleaming Sunshine. Yi-tsang, Dong Yin, are you sure you guys have invited Yi Si into the guild? I can't find her. I'm sure. I'm very absolutely sure. Wasn't she invited in already? I've personally asked for Sister Blue's help for that. I've even confirmed it with her. Then where is she? Lefty and Gleaming Sunshine shook their heads collectively, obviously stating that they had nothing to do with Yi Si's disappearance. Lu Chang glared at the duo. Before she could say a word, Peacock Blue's voice rang in the guild channel. To those who have not gone to any dungeons yet, report to Drunken Dream at administration. You'll each be assigned to a party and sent into the dungeon an hour later. Lefty and Gleaming Sunshine were excited. Lu Chang. Since you can't find Yi Si, let's head into the dungeon and get ourselves some good equipment. Hasn't little Ci given you guys a set of equipment each? We must go into the dungeon ourselves at least once. Dong Yin grabbed hold of Lu Chang and dragged her to register with Drunken Dream. After spending 2 hours cleaning Red Lake City, Yi Si greeted the NPCs and learned gathering, skinning, potion brewing, and cooking. She returned to the city hall and handed in the quest to the officer. Yi Si then went back to the guild encampment, then to the newbie village. She once again arrived at Natasha's to replenish her arrows and headed to Icy Cave. Icy Cave normal difficulty. We need 2 more, need 1 tank and a healer. Orsish Rogue going to Icy Cave normal difficulty, looking for a party. LVL 10 Gnome Druid, I can tank and heal. Add me into your party. When the players had begun to level up, hordes of LVL 5 players gathered in front of Icy Cave. Some of them looked for a party while others were a party looking for members. Most of them were going for normal difficulty. There was no one going for hard difficulty of Icy Cave. Yi Si decided to write a message searching for a party. It was then that she realized her chat channels were automatically muted by the system when she had entered Red Lake City. She unmuted her private message and map channel, after which she immediately received a message from Lu Chang. God damn it. Where have you been little Ci? I went to Red Lake City to bind my city recalling crystal. All my chat channels were reset and muted. Lu Chang did not trouble her further but still grumbled under her breath, I have been looking for you. What's up? Icy Cave, hard difficulty of course. I've been looking for you everywhere and I could not contact you. I was dragged by Dong Yin and Yi Tsung to perform hard labor instead. What hard labor? The guild admin separated us into different parties to head into the dungeon. It was not that bad, except for the fact that it was quiet once we entered the dungeon and the equipment was not divided fairly. The party leader took what he needed and gave one of the best equipment to the guild. Only then did we get to divide the rest amongst ourselves. Lu Tsang was agitated. I don't really care about the equipment, but after all our hard work, we only got like 1 or 2 each. The party leader got at least 3. That's how it works. Guilds would usually try their best to raise the GS, equipment rating, of their core players so that they could clear dungeons. It's normal for you guys to receive less in the earlier stages. Yi Ci was not surprised as this was how the major guilds usually operated. You mean that we're all substitutes? Lu Chang was even more depressed. Don't worry about it. You'll get your chance once you have enough GS. Your current equipment is possibly even better than your party leaders. You're not a substitute. Yi Ci comforted Lu Chang with a laugh. Sai, talk to you later. We're fighting a boss. Lu Chang didn't appear to be in a good mood, but she was no longer agitated after her conversation with Yi Ci. She closed the private message channel just as the party leader directed them to fight against Shatter. Any brave ones headed for Icy Cave hard difficulty. Looking for DP, note. A slang for damage dealers. We need 3 more members. Someone announced this right after Yi Ci turned off her private message. She immediately looked for the source of the voice and sent a request to join the party. Her request was immediately accepted. A dwarven warrior and a human cleric was in the party. The warrior's name was Little Icy Cold Hands and the cleric's name was Icy Cold Little Hands. It was obvious that they were friends. They shouted in amazement as they saw Yi Ci, wow, there's actually someone who's not afraid to die. Yi Ci was ridiculed by the duo. Will the fear of death prevent you from dying? Make sense. The now trio gathered in front of Icy Cave and Little Icy Cold Hands called out for party members again. Little Grouper Fish and Just a Blade joined the party. They were a mage and barbarian respectively, the former LVL 8 and the latter LVL 9. They were still under newbie protection. No wonder they were not afraid to die. With the exception of Little Icy Cold Hands, the rest of the party was either orc, human, or elf. All of them were tall. Little Icy Cold Hands could only look up to them as he spoke. I'd like to think that nobody has been to the hard difficulty of Icy Cave yet. Don't be afraid to die when you enter the dungeon. Chapter 21 Blood on Icy Cave Hard Difficulty. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The group entered the dungeon with high morale after renouncing their fear of death. There was an internet saying. One did not need to be afraid of godlike opponents, but one should always beware of pig-like teammates. This was the first time they worked together as a team, and Yi Ci did not expect much teamwork from them. However, Yi Ci was on the verge of collapsing after an encounter with 2 monsters. Of her 4 teammates, only Little Grouper Fish had some gaming basics. He was merely throwing fireballs while standing still, however, without much consideration to his positioning. Just a Blade played like a tank, facing off against Monster's head, and while Icy Cold Little Hands did not heal as a cleric, she was busy throwing lightning balls alongside Little Grouper Fish instead. Little Icy Cold Hands was doing bad as well. He could not build up an aggro of the monsters they encounter and protect his teammates properly. If it was not for Yi Ci who took out the 2 monsters single-handedly, the entire party would be annihilated. We can't make it, our equipments are inferior. If we carry on, we'll really die, sighed Little Icy Cold Hands, almost giving up. It's just 2 monsters. Can you not be such a defeatist? Icy Cold Little Hands glared at him, lowering his head as he continued to munch on his biscuit. Little Grouper Fish looked at the rest of them and spoke slowly, who will be in command? Just a Blade immediately shook his head. I'll just follow any orders to the letter. Little Icy Cold Hands wanted to raise his hand and volunteered, but decided against it in the end. If you trust me, how about letting me have a try, said Yi Si. Yi Si's damage output was clearly listed out. Although it was merely 2 monsters at the entrance, she was the only one in the party who seemed not to have made any mistakes. The others looked amongst themselves before nodded in agreement. I've been in this dungeon in normal difficulty quite some times, and I've explored the hard difficulty of the dungeon before. There shouldn't be a problem as long as you guys listen to me, said Yi Si after noticing distrustful expressions from the others. They did not object. Yi Si began stating out the mistakes her teammates had made after having observed them earlier on. Little Icy Cold Hands, you're a warrior, the MT, main tank, the most essential character in a dungeon, you must defend against the mob. Use taunt to draw their attention. Don't hesitate to use down whenever the CD, cooldown timer, is up. You must remember this. Don't let Just a Blade take all the damage, he's a melee damage dealer. He's the 2T, a substitute for the MT in case the MT died. Okay, I understand. Little Icy Cold Hands replied with confidence. Just a Blade, simply time your attacks with Little Icy Cold Hands and be careful not to OT, have a damage output higher than the tank, causing aggro to switch. Just a Blade nodded with a serious expression. Icy Cold Little Hands, you're a healer, not a DP, damage dealer. Your main job is to heal the tank while paying attention to the health of Just a Blade and the others. Icy Cold Little Hands creased her eyebrows, appearing to be worried. But I can deal more damage. We don't need that much damage in this dungeon. What we need is a healer. Yi Si guided Icy Cold Little Hands patiently. Icy Cold Little Hands was about to voice out her objection again, but she nodded instead after noticing the attention from the rest of the party. Okay, I'll heal. Yi Si shifted her sight towards Little Grouper Fish. Little Grouper, have you learned mobile casting? Asked Yi Si. No, I don't have enough money. The question seemed to have hit a spot as he trembled slightly. Yi Si kept quiet. She understood the pain. Mages could learn a passive ability called mobile casting at LV8, it was the only passive ability made available to learn from instructors. Despite that, almost 80% of the mages would never learn this ability at LV8. There was only one reason. It was too darn expensive. Yi Si could clearly remember that day when she tried to learn mobile casting in her past life. She almost had a seizure after learning of the price. 20 gold coins. It was an impossible amount of wealth to be accumulated by a newbie. After assigning roles to her party members, the group continued with their journey in the dungeon. Despite being on hard difficulty, Icy Cave was still a tiny prep dungeon. It was not that hard. Although 3 of them were newbies, they followed Yi Si's words to the letter and performed their assigned tasks well. With someone tanking the mob, Yi Si could not be bothered with moving all around the place and stood beside Little Grouper Fish at the rear of the team. OL3 was perhaps the most relaxed in the entire party. The only thing it did was to wag its tail behind Yi Si while acting cute and wandering away once in a while. It even asked Yi Si for meat from time to time. Yi Si did not forget about OL3. She was merely trying to raise its loyalty so that it could be used against the boss later on. The experience points rewarded in hard difficulty was way higher than the normal difficulty. OL3 was already LV5 and they had barely completed less than half of the dungeon. Its loyalty had increased from 12 to 23. The party soon reached the boss Shatter in no time. The entire dungeon was no different from the normal difficulty, aside from the boss's joint movement and an additional elite spider. This dungeon was a trial to the player's damage output capabilities. A slight screw-up could easily annihilate the entire party. OL3 died the last time exactly because the spider spewed venom non-stop. Let me make some arrangements before we go in. Little Icy Cold Hands, you must distract the Rat Man and the Spider away from our DP and make sure that boss have their backs towards our DP. Icy Cold Little Hands, your job is to heal Little Icy Cold Hands. Don't let him die. Blade, you attack the Rat Man from the back. Don't stand anywhere near Little Icy Cold Hands. That'll relieve some pressure from the healer. You guys need to concentrate your attacks on the spider and take it out first. The four nodded and asked almost in unison, how about you? Yi Si smiled and pointed at the kobold and Shatter, I'll keep them occupied. Take out the kobold once you're done here, and then the boss. Is my explanation clear? They silently grumbled despite understanding Yi Si's words. For a huntress to go up against two bosses, it was insane. Attack. As per their previous arrangement, Little Icy Cold Hands and Yi Si rushed at the three bosses at the same time. Little Icy Cold Hands casted Taunt at the Ratman and its spider, securing their aggro on himself. Then, he shifted his position so that the bosses had their backs to Little Grouper Fish, just a blade and icy cold little hands. Yi Si released OL3 which pounced on the kobold. OL3 casted Taunt on the kobold, placing the kobold's aggro on itself. Yi Si casted a Hunter's Mark on Shatter and fired a Snake Venom Needle at it. A critical hit. 210. With her first arrow being a critical hit, Shatter's aggro on Yi Si was instantly raised to 200%. It charged at Yi Si and breathed at her. It was one of Shatter's skills in the hard difficulty, Frosty Mist. Players hit by the skill would be affected by a frozen debuff, negative status, slowing down their movement speed by 50% for 10 seconds. Being frozen was like a death sentence to an average player. Once they were frozen, it usually meant that the party would be annihilated. Frosty Mist had a channeling time of 1.5 seconds. The moment Shatter began the channeling, Yi Si leapt onto the air with the nearby cave wall as her springing board. She narrowly dodged the Frosty Mist. Yi Si spun around in midair, firing another Snake Venom Needle at Shatter. It's another critical hit. 221. Her movements were smooth and clean. Icy Cold Little Hands and Little Grouper Fish happened to be facing Yi Si at that time. They were stunned by Yi Si's ferocity as she kite the helpless Shatter, so much so that they had even forgot to do their own task. Yi Si observed the rest of the party while she was kiting Shatter. She realized that Icy Cold Little Hands and Little Grouper Fish were dumbfoundedly staring at her. After noticing that Little Icy Cold Hands' health was dropping rapidly, Yi Si shouted, Icy Cold Little Hands. The MT's health. Little Grouper Fish, don't stop attacking. The two snapped out of their trance and the former resume healing and the latter began his attack. Little Icy Cold Hands was horrified as his hit points which had nearly hit the rock bottom. Because of her mistake, Icy Cold Little Hands could never raise his hit points beyond 40% no matter how hard she tried. With the situation once again stable, Yi Si continued kiting Shatter while healing OL3 once in a while. The Ratman and its elite spider finally fell after a short while. The four immediately collapsed upon the kobold and made short work of it. They then converged on Shatter. By that time, it had only 30% of its hit points left. Shatter was dead within 10 minutes. The system notification chimed in the moment Shatter's corpse hit the ground. Your party was the first to complete Icy Cave Hard difficulty. Do you want the name of the party members to be shown? The first to clear the dungeon. Little Icy Cold Hands rubbed his hands excitedly. He looked at Yi Si, seeking her advice. The battle earlier on had upgraded her status from a good huntress to a real pro in Little Icy Cold Hands' heart.